Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Cryptopsy, As Gomorrah Burns, out September 8th on Nuclear Blast. This album has 8 tracks, 33 minutes in length, and this is the band's 8th full-length studio album. They are a Canadian technical death metal band. Now it's been 11 years since they released a record, so there's definitely a lot of excitement and perhaps a lot of pressure in terms of what this album will deliver. Will it meet the expectations of the fans? Well, I'm here to tell you if it met my expectations. Now, when it comes to the design of the record, I think this album is exactly what it needed to be. If you're creating an album that lives off of heaviness, brutality, and aggression, you have to be mindful of the length of that record because you don't want the album to start to feel a little bit redundant, and you don't want the songs to give the essence that the album doesn't have enough movement and that everything falls in place in the same way, in the same fashion, with the same processes, allowing songs to kind of become mirror images of one another. So having this album at 33 minutes, it's perfect. It's also a throwback to some of their earlier records that were always around the 30 to 32 minute mark. This is the perfect way of bringing 8 songs to the table, injecting them with as much aggression, as much intensity, as much brutality as possible, and still keeping the overall experience of going through all 8 tracks as fresh, as exciting, as engaging as you can possibly make it. So I love this design because it's a design that on one hand gives you a sense of going back into the past of the band, and on the other hand fits perfectly with the new sound that they've put together for this release. A new sound that it's definitely a little bit less technical than what I expected coming in, but it's still as brutal as it's ever been. An album that depends heavily on the drum sound to guide the experience. This is definitely not a guitar-centric record, it's not a bass-centric record, but it's an album that has at its main spinal cord, its main DNA, the drum sound. The impact of the drums is noticeable from the first to the last song. A lot of the brutality, a lot of the volume, a lot of the heaviness of this record starts and ends with the drums. They are definitely the main protagonist of this story. Now, the production behind this album allows the drums to be on the forefront, but it also allows the other elements to still have room to breathe and have an impact in how you're going to digest this album. The other element that I felt that had a very interesting role was the bass. It really pops throughout the entire record. It allows itself to come into the forefront through the mix, giving it a little bit more texture to the songs, definitely offering you a lot more warmth to the overall sound, and adding some technical elements to a sound that at times feels very linear and very straightforward, almost simplified to a certain degree. So I enjoyed the dynamic that exists on this record between what the drums are doing and how the bass is complementing that experience. The two are tied at the hip from start to finish. You see one and the other is never that far behind. Now the guitars fall a little bit in between where these two elements are located within the overall sound design. The guitars on this album have two faces, if you will. The experience that you get from the solos and the experience that you get outside of the solos. Within the solos there are moments of brightness, moments of light, moments of drained aggression, where the overall experience of this album is one of intensity, always in your face. The solos allow you to take a step back from that experience and better see what's around you, creating little pockets that make the overall experience a little bit easier on the listener. The album is relentless. The album is intense. The duration of the record is short, allowing that intensity and brutality to be magnified. But having these pockets, having these solos throughout the record, definitely allows the listener a chance to at least break, reset, and refocus on everything else. And it makes the overall brutality that surrounds them feel even higher, even stronger. Now, outside of the solos, the guitars are very dynamic. They don't have a one-size-fits-all approach. They have a lot of life in them. It's just that they're not necessarily the ones pushing the listener forward or igniting the experience, but they're still impacting the texture of the sound, the warmth of the sound, and where these tracks, or how much you're going to get out of these tracks. I wish the guitars had a little bit more of a technical flair to them on this album, It feels like the record pushes the envelope more to the heavier, brutal side of their sound, and the guitars, while giving some glimpses of that technicality, it doesn't go as far into the woods as I would like them to see. I think it would make this album slightly richer if that was the case, and it would take away from some of that simplicity that it feels like it has by overcomplicating certain elements. Sometimes overcomplicating certain elements works, specifically when the album is short in length. It would allow you to feel like there's more in this box and allow you to feel like the box also has a lot more depth in it. As far as the vocals are concerned, I thought it was a consistent performance from start to end, very dynamic. The best thing I can say about the vocals of this album is that they really understand the different momentums of the record. They magnify the different pockets within the songs. They magnify the overall structure of the songs extremely well. Not creating the same approach, not creating the same end results allows for the listener to feel like the same movement or the same chaos, control chaos that exists in the sound is very well represented in the vocal performance. The range is very interesting, is very fluid, very dynamic, very organic. It feels like a very natural end result to the music that was created for it. So the vocal performance on this album, while not jumping up and down, while not being a roller coaster ride, it definitely emphasizes the songs, the structure, the experience extremely well from beginning all the way to the end. After 11 years waiting for a record from Cryptopsy, I have to say that this album didn't disappoint me. I wish it had a little bit more of a technical flair, or at least I wish they had put more emphasis on the technical side of the band, allowed that side to define the experience a lot more, and not necessarily just living off of the brutality and heaviness that this album puts forward. But it's still a strong record nevertheless. I love the design, I love the structure, I love the length, I love the nuances between the songs merging really well from one to another. It's a great fluid record with a great experience, vocally top notch. I love the drum sound. How much the bass comes through is definitely impactful and enjoyable at the same time. I just wish the guitars had a parallel role to the ones the drums are having and not being subjugated more to a secondary one in the overall big picture of the soundscape of this record. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Godless Deceiver. This is a track that really has a sense of brutality right from the get-go. It moves with bursts, but it also has methodic pockets. So it's a song that doesn't feel always consistent. The brutality comes across in a consistent way, but the song doesn't feel consistent because there are some methodic moments, then there are some heavier, more intense moments. So there is room for growth, and I think that's the best way to explain how this song moves between those bursts of heaviness and the more methodic moments. It's a gradual growth. There is a sense of going upwards, increasing in volume, in intensity, in aggression as it progresses from the methodic side of the track to the more aggressive side of the track. This makes the song overall feel more dynamic, feel more fluid, not necessarily as a roller coaster ride, but definitely one that goes up a ramp every single time, then it resets, and then it builds up again up that ramp. So it has a great sense of stop and go, but the go is not linear, the go is exponentially moving forward and moving upwards. So it's a great track from that standpoint. I love that it gives you a sense of movement that makes the song more engaging all around. Now, the solo on this track, in my opinion, is important for two reasons. One, it resets the song, it resets your taste palette as far as where this track is taking you, and it also adds a sense of quality and brightness and pause and simplicity. It's not simple, but it offers that experience because everything else around this track is so chaotic. It's moving, it has so much movement in it. The solo almost puts everything into slow motion, and that really gives the track the ability to push the listener into the last third, allowing you to fully be engaged with the song from start to end. The bass really pops throughout the entire track, but that is true about the whole album. It's a song that finishes as strong as it started. Next we have The Righteous Lost. The bass is outstanding on this song. I think this track every track gives a chance for the bass to really play a role, but in this song I really felt like the bass had more of a predominant role than some other songs on the record. It leaves a lasting impression, it leaves a lasting mark. The guitars are a little bit thicker, staying a little bit more consistent in that thickness, merging really well with the aggressive and heavy sides of the drums. So this is a track where the guitars and drums work really well in parallel with one another, almost merging at times, and then you have the bass outside of that pocket, outside of that box, impacting the song in a different way, creating almost a sense of two protagonists, one drums and guitars together and the other one the bass on its own. So it's a track that has this sort of sound experience, a really well put together track, vocally very strong vocally. It pushes the range a little bit more, and pushing the range vocally on this song definitely has a defining impact. Another track with a great solo, injecting melody, injecting a peaceful nature. The solos always do that on this record. They always give you a sense to reset your palette and readjust to what the song is going to give you, offering you that needed pause, that needed break in an overall record that doesn't have pauses, that doesn't have breaks. I love the thickness, the robust nature, and that robust nature of sound and depth of sound definitely comes from the bass popping so much, being so consistent, but also sitting outside of the box of where everything else has been put into. Last but not least, Praise the Filth. This is perhaps one of the few songs where I felt like the guitars had more of a predominant role, had more of a lead. The killer riff that this song has really stands out. The guitar sound stands out. It has a little bit of a dark tone, a dark nature to it. It's a song that maybe feels less layered, but feels more textured, if that makes sense. It feels richer. Maybe I should use that word. It feels richer in sound. The sound has more to offer, but it's not as layered. You don't feel like you have to peel as many layers to get to what this song is all about. It feels simplified in its processes, very streamlined in how it comes across, allowing you to see the different moments within the track really well, and seeing what the instruments are doing within those moments, allowing you for a more accessible approach to a very heavy, brutal, and intense song. So I love the dynamic of this track. I love how the sound is put together. Like I said, simplifying the momentum, simplifying the movements, and then the vocals are the icing on the cake, really defining those moments well, allowing you to see the structure of the song from a different angle, from a different instrument, if you will, in this case, the vocals. This is it, Cryptopsy with As Gomorrah Burns, out September 8th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.